Hello, and welcome to today's webinar. I would now like to introduce your speakers for today, Steve Sonnenberg, CEO at Awardco, and Tanner Runia, COO at Awardco, and your moderator for today, Branson Damron. Branson, you have the floor.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Catherine. It's good to be with you all today. As was said before, my name is Bronson, and this is Steve and Tanner, the CEO and COO of Awardco. We were just chatting about a few things before we got started. But Steve, why don't you introduce yourself? How long have you been CEO of Awardco, and how did you get the idea to start Awardco? I know you could talk about that forever.
Yeah, I'll keep it short. It's good to be with everyone today. So I've been the CEO of Awardco since its founding back in late 2011, beginning 2012. So a little over a decade.
Yeah.
And
crazy to think it's been a decade.
Yeah, but it was in my blood, and what I mean by that is my father, he was in the employee recognition industry, still is,
Yeah.
and he, out of the Chicagoland area, focused on recognition programs for a lot of great corporations like McDonald's and Motorola and Keebler out of the Chicagoland area, and even the Chicago Bulls. He did all 6 championship rings. And so I grew up in Chicago watching him just do an unbelievable job working with customers, helping them with their recognition programs. He focused on the rings and the plaques and the lapel pins, more of the physical items.
Yeah.
And so that's where I saw early on this incredible opportunity, this incredible industry, and these great organizations that are in it to modernize it, to change it up a little bit with some of the things that we've done. So that's how I got involved.
That's a great story. How long have you been involved with Tanner, Steve?
Tanner and I actually met when we worked at an organization called Qualtrics.
Yeah.
And we sold together, and so that was back in 2013?
Yeah, 2013 to 2014.
So people don't realize, like, Awardco was founded, but, like, I wasn't a grow-at-all-costs kind of person. Like, I had a job, I did this on the side, I wanted to, kind of go that route. And that's where I met Tanner, and that's where he was learning a little bit more about what was going on, and he quickly, him and I jived and connected, and shortly after that, we were out of Qualtrics.
Yeah.
On Awardco full-time.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
So, yeah, believe it or not, we actually met in this building.
This very building, yeah.
Steve and I kind of come full circle.
That's great.
Fun. So, Steve and I met. We worked on what was called back then the Employee Insights team at Qualtrics around engagement surveys, 360 evaluations. And Steve, kind of came up with the idea and said, "Hey, look, I love what we're doing. It's a great space to be in, but I want to, where rubber meets the road, get into recognition, rewards, and help revamp and reimagine." And so that's where it really caught my eye, and it was kind of, hand in hand with what we were, talking about and hearing from, feedback with, with Qualtrics, and so it just made a ton of sense.
Yeah.
And Steve's awesome to work with. So
I love that. I love that you both have been doing this for so long because, and I've been at Awardco for 3 years, but one thing that I've really appreciated about both of your approach is that you didn't grow at all costs, and you've always been mindful of things going on outside the economy and kind of the general atmosphere of things, and that's kind of what we want to talk about today.
Yeah.
It's like recession anxiety. We've all been kind of dealing with that. Are we in a recession? Are we not in a recession? What does that mean? And what does that mean for our families? What does that mean for our jobs? So we're going to kind of go over that, and then how recognition plays into that. What does recognition do to help with recession anxiety? Can it help with recession anxiety? And stuff like that. So as you can see here, everyone kind of attending this webinar, we're going to talk about recession anxiety and how using employee rewards and recognition strengthens your organization during uncertain times. So, as we already did, we met Steve and Tanner, and now we're going to kind of dive into a little bit of the nitty-gritty of this. The recession, are we in a recession? Are we not? And it's kind of a scary topic to talk about. It's on everybody's mind. It's been on mine, and stuff like that. So let's take a step back and kind of think about a recession. Are we in a recession? What does it mean to be in a recession? And have you seen recessions and that kind of that sense of anxiety in the workforce before, even as you've been with the Awardco or before? What do you think, Tanner?
Yeah, I think it's really interesting. Obviously, economic times are a little bit shaky. It's hard to identify what's going on, what's causing this, what's happening, and I don't want to claim that Steve and I really know. We're in tech. We're not necessarily analysts in the markets, but we do follow pretty closely. And I think a couple of the variables that are out there that I would say lead to this is Now, obviously, we came out of COVID, lots of money pumped into the markets. You have, a war over in Ukraine with Russia, causing, that's probably the biggest driver of inflation and causing a lot of this, what's becoming a recession, I would say. I think we'll dive into some of those details, and there's a lot of factors, variables that go into that, but there definitely looks like there's going to be some hard times ahead. It doesn't look like it's slowing down, currently anymore. I know yesterday they came out, and it was, 9.1
inflation.
On inflation, 9.1% above anticipated 8.8. And so I think, look, there's indicators out there that we're not through this yet. But I think maybe the message that we're hoping to relay today is that business still goes on. Even in a recession, it doesn't halt business. Things still happen in the markets. Companies still keep pushing forward. I think one of the things that is hard to navigate right now is even during COVID, that was, it was hard for some businesses. We saw companies that had a lot of, that was almost, catapult into their, into their business as well. But mostly for a large part of a decade plus, we haven't really seen terrible markets. It's been very good. It's been solid. We've seen lots of growth. You haven't seen a lot of corrections in the markets. And so I think for a lot of people, the reason why there's so much anxiety right now around this, recession or, so-called, what lack of technical terms there, but during this downturn right now, is that we haven't really seen it. And there's a lot of young, new demographics that have come into the workforce that don't really know what this entails, and it's caused a lot of uncertainty. And so that's where, I think a lot of the message today is, look, business still happens. Companies are still going forward. They may change some strategic, ways they do business. They may have some pullbacks. They may have a number of things and actions they take, but business will still go on.
Yeah, I really like what you said there. Like, business is still going to go on no matter what. And what you said, are we in a recession? We're not quite sure yet. So just to kind of help everybody understand, be on the same page, help us be on the same page. What is a recession? 2 consecutive quarters of negative growth in GDP. And we haven't seen that yet, right? Like, it remains to be seen. Give it a couple months and it might turn into that. And all indicators are kind of suggesting that they are. I just read an article this morning where the electric car company Rivian just laid off a bunch of people. Twitter, Netflix, Tesla, these large companies are laying off a lot of people, and that's creating a lot of anxiety. And I wonder, Steve, have you seen that same sense of anxiety in any of Aworko's clients and what's in the different industries that they're working in?
For sure, yeah. I mean, there's anxiety all over. And so what I love what we do, we focus on trying to focus on the positive. We try to, there's lots of anxiety, so how do you compete against that? Well, you focus on the good, you focus on the positive. And so, but absolutely, I mean, we have some customers that have laid off their employees, as you were just talking about. But what's interesting is but they want to go deeper with rewards and recognition.
Yeah. And
so not only are they laying off people, Tanner, you just mentioned this, like they still have, their workforce. They still need to take care of their employees. And so, yes, we have seen that with our own customers, but we see them leaning in to rewards and recognition more than ever.
Yeah, that brings up another thought that I was thinking about the other day, and this is part of this webinar, but we've talked about this at length. We don't need to go into depth of this. Recessions in business, what does that mean? Less business spend, a slump in consumer spending, slow demand, things like that. What does it mean for people? Leadership tends to ignore rewards and recognition. It's sometimes when you're tightening your belt, it's just like, wow, that thing, we don't need that thing. What is the thing we need the most, And
there on the slide, it talks about stress at work, stress at home. And I was just reading in a local news article here in Salt Lake City where they saw the speeding tickets were up 100% from last Memorial Day.
Really?
And they contributed that to stress. And so the faster we're driving, the more stressed we are. And so I thought that was interesting. So yeah, it's crazy out there. People are stressed. We're driving fast.
Yeah, we're driving fast, and sometimes, that always can influence everything we do at work and things like that. But
one thing to go along with that, I think years ago I did an internship at SkyWest Airlines, and they did a corporate communications or an engagement survey, and they would do it once a year. And that was kind of, I would say, standard amongst the industry or for any company is, hey, we'll do an engagement survey once a year, kind of feel the sentiment of how employees are feeling. And over time, over the past, decade or so, what we've started to see is, hey, HR, I would say historically has probably been, like you said, rewards and recognition was maybe cut out of the budgets or maybe not as much of a focus during a recession or, trying times during a company's, path or adventure there. But I think what's interesting now is when I met Steve at Qualtrics, that was I would say there was a wave of this human capital that's saying, hey, we're now realizing that employees are our most valuable asset.
Yeah.
And now companies are spending more and more on human capital than they ever have been. So it went from like, hey, we're wanting to hear what they say once a year, to now poll surveys every day or every other day. And they're starting to want to hear what the employees are feeling, what's going on around the organization. What that ultimately does is create production, a great culture and environment where people want to produce, they want to be bought into the company that they're working for.
Yeah.
And so that's what's interesting. I would say, yeah, a lot of companies historically have probably left rewards and recognition behind. But as the tide has shifted and people now realize, okay, well, we've had a war on talent. People were able to get jobs, and it's kind of, it's fluctuated all over the place over the past, I would say 3 years.
Sure.
But one thing that has remained the same and continued to grow is the value that employees bring to the workplace. And so that is where, even though there may be layoffs or reduction in force or whatever that might look like from an HR perspective, I would say HR has moved from maybe lower on the totem pole to the higher parts where they're, hey, this is very important. And HR has a much bigger presence, I would say, in decision making, even in a time of a recession, to say, hey, we need to make these decisions. We need to make sure our workforce is more productive. We need to make sure people are, we're retaining our employees, we're keeping them here, they're excited, they're engaged, and then we create a culture of success, even though it may feel like a scary time, and that's what recession exists. So that's where I think rewards and recognition and just, employees in general right now, you're starting to see, hey, it's much more important than people used to think.
Yeah,
for sure.
there are a lot of parallels between, at least I feel like there are, and I'd love to hear both of your opinions on this, but there are a lot of parallels between what we're experiencing right now, that same sense of anxiety, and what happened right at the beginning of the pandemic, right? Markets were uncertain. People were, lots of layoffs were happening. There was a lot of slowdown. What similarities do you see between that time and this time, and what differences do you see? Tanner, we'll ask you that first, and then Steve, I'd love to hear your thoughts on that too.
Yeah, I think maybe there are definitely a lot of similarities, but I do think there are some differences right now as well. Obviously, talking about COVID, that was an interesting time. You had dynamics changing from, hey, a work from home environment, and that, how do you create a culture? How do you create recognition from a work from home environment? How's the company going to be able to perform when people aren't collaborating in the office? And so I think everyone was able, to kind of adapt and had to learn a new way of being productive, working from home. All these different variables that now have entered the workplace. But I think what's interesting is I need to be careful. There are companies that were definitely affected during COVID. It was really hard, and that, I think, but we did see areas that boomed. You had e-commerce, you had all these different areas of business that, thrive in those scenarios. Yeah. And I think what's different about this is, I would say there's probably less companies that thrive during a recession, right? I think this is where, from a more financial or economical standpoint, there will be companies that still do well right now, but for the most part, when there is a recession and the economy's on a downturn, everyone is kind of in the same boat. Everyone's kind of, hey, we're peeling back, we're playing safe, we're maybe, putting hiring freezes in place or slows in place. We may have, like I said, layoffs or reduction in force or whatever that might be. And so I think, on a more macro scale, you're probably going to see more companies doing the same type of things. You won't see as many, I would say, spikes in industries or certain things like that. So.
Yeah, definitely. And just I agree with what Tanner's saying there. So you saw layoffs when COVID happened.
Totally.
You see more right now. That's what I'm seeing, and people started looking at rewards and recognizing their employees when COVID happened. It was like a spotlight.
Yeah.
Like, hey, we got to take care of our employees. In fact, we're all over the place. We don't even know where everyone is, right? So what brings us together? Rewards and recognition, right? Yeah. And so I knew that personally myself, because when I'm in my office and I'm just away from everyone, it's been 30 days, I'm like, man, I feel down. It wasn't until I started recognizing and peers and I started feeling good and connected again. Yeah. So COVID was a reminder that we need to take care of our employees. Yeah. The recession, possibly happening, is another reminder that we need to take care of our employees. And it's more serious because COVID at that time we were like a lot of unknowns. Yeah. And now we've gone through recessions in the past. And so it's scary. And so the next little bit is going to be scary. And so this is a time to really take care of our employees more than ever. Yeah. So, yeah.
There's a question here in the Q&A, and sorry about that. We just had a thing where they asked if we could talk a little bit louder, so we can do that. But this question says, what do you think contributed to the success of people, when the people that were successful in economic downturns or during recessions? What contributed to that success? And we're going to go into this. I'm teeing this up because rewards and recognition is one thing we strongly believe in. But what contributes to someone's success in an economic uncertainty?
I mean, one of the things that I think, I mean, because it's what I live and breathe, is what contributes to success is making sure that you let that individual know that you care.
Yeah.
And when people care, they want to do more. Do you know what I mean? So that's why we saw success with Awardco, because we were all about, hey, let's recognize the good and let's care. And so, you know, people, you know, and when you do care, there's so much science behind the psychology of happiness and what that means. People solve problems faster. They're more creative, and the list goes on, which we'll talk about. But I mean, that's from my point of view, is in the world that I live in, is just it's the speed of trust and able to when you're able to do that when you care and recognize, and when you recognize someone, they're like, man, they want to do more. That's one aspect of it.
Yeah, I love that, because I was working here at Awardco when the pandemic hit, and I remember the same feelings. Like, you hadn't seen anybody for days or months, and the recognition is what kind of pulled me back into it. Like, oh, okay, things are all right. Everybody's stressed. You know, we're doing okay.
Yeah, just to add into this, I think you know, companies that are successful during a recession or during, you know, whatever it might be, and it may not. Different companies have different experiences at different point in you know, in that life cycle, and I think one of the things that we found is successful here at Awardco, and what we've seen across, you know, a lot of our clients is one, you know, it's really hard to, you know, kind of stomach this, but you can look at this in another light. Hey, now's the time we need to become, one, more productive and more effective in the workplace with the employees that we already have. How do we do that? Okay, well, we already know, and we'll talk about some of the benefits of recognition. I also think it's a time for companies to say, hey, look, we need to become efficient and effective in processes. And obviously, I'm, you know, in operations, so I like that. And, hey, how do we become more efficient as we scale and grow as a company? And then also, I think this gives an opportunity to have some really clear directive and I would say uniform vision for what the company needs to be doing. And so I think we've seen that here at Awardco during this, you know, over the past 2 or 3 months, as we started to say, okay, hey, collectively as an organization, down from, you know, Steve, our CEO, down to, you know, our newly, you know, hired support rep, everyone has a vision. Everyone is in it together, and you create a form of unity and culture and buy-in from the employees. And I think that's what really causes people to be successful is, hey, look, yeah, sure, we're going to have to tighten budgets. Sure, we're going to have to find more efficiencies from operations. But I think making sure that the organizations that really get in and say, hey, from the leadership team and the messaging's out correctly, that we know what we're out to do, from a tactical standpoint to a vision standpoint. If the company can kind of gather around that and really get around that vision and that direction, people are on board and they really go after it. And I would say they probably work harder. Yeah. Right.
It's absolutely time to consolidate and do what you're doing and do it well. You know. Yeah. So let's kind of dive into that. We've talked a lot about the recession, and we don't need to belabor it too much. The Great Resignation is obviously still going on. I mean, we have stats that say March of this past year, the highest amount of resignations in history since they started recording it. And that was beyond this November of the previous year, which was the highest then. It's 4.53 million people resigned in March. Now, that may change in the next few months, right, because people are a little uncertain and they don't want to leave their jobs. But all that to say, there's a lot of uncertainty, right? We're all kind of waiting for the next shoe to drop. But technically, are we in a recession? Not yet. We're feeling its effects, though. We're feeling that anxiety. So what can we do about it? We're feeling that similar impact. What can we do? So, like you were mentioning there, Tanner, we can protect our people. You can protect, as an HR leader, you can protect everything that your company stands for, and just the individuals. I think all too often, I mean, you're both business leaders, but I feel all too often something that gets missed in business is the individuals, right? Because we're focusing on business impact, and that's important and needful. But a business is made up of people, right? And that's what drives it. So you need to help make your people feel supported and secure. And what are some ways that we can do that? I mean, there's recognition, obviously, but what are some other ways that you've seen, maybe during COVID or before, even then, when times were uncertain, Steve, how you could support individuals during an anxious time?
Yeah, totally. You can get creative with recognition, right? Yeah. I saw at times people, as people went home, they recognized them and rewarded them with points to spruce up their home office. to let them know, hey, we care about you. We know
Yeah,
you're home.
right.
And so they'd create a catalog of home items, and they'd say, here's a couple $100, let's go pick what you want, you know. So that was
Yeah.
creative ways
Yeah.
to let them know that we care about you.
Mm-hmm.
That's one thing that I saw.
Yeah, and we saw many clients doing similar things, right? Supporting their individuals and then protecting their people, like we've talked about here, and then building a strong foundation. You can strengthen your organization by strengthening your processes and your people as a result. And Tanner, you kind of touched on this, but I wonder, are there any specifics you can share about how during economic uncertainty, how can people strengthen their processes when all of these outside forces are just causing all of this, anxiety?
Yeah, I think obviously from maybe an HR more related perspective, I
Yeah.
would say, one thing that was interesting that came to mind is we were at a trade show. We went to, what was it? I was at SHRM in Louisiana.
Yeah.
And what was really interesting when we were down there is the number of companies that were popping up for, just overall health, like even mental health, like people working from home, people working, in siloed areas, not having as much interaction, whatever. And it was interesting. More and more people are focusing on, hey, how are our employees really doing? And obviously, we talk about recognition, you talk about points, and we talk about, how to engage them. But I think at the core, it's really getting down and saying, hey, we haven't even felt some of the dynamics of what a work from home environment looks like. So how can you change some of the process? We're trying to get them to be, comfortable, feeling like they can be productive at home, feel like they're part of the group, even though they're, we're behind a screen from everyone.
Yeah.
I think that's kind of changing. So I think from an operational standpoint, kind of understanding how do we connect, how do we change operations, how do we change efficiencies, and collaborate even more through, a virtual world. And so it was interesting to see that. I think a lot of productivity and a lot of inefficiencies may happen, because people don't feel connected as much. And that's where I think, one of the things that we've had around the office is, we're increasing the number of meetings that we've had with people who are working from home to make sure that they're in the, spontaneous, hey, conversations that we have to say, oh, hey, we're going to change this, we're going to do that. But when it comes down to operationally, I think, in the bottom line, we, from an operations standpoint, a financial standpoint, we kind of go through the numbers and say, okay, hey, specifically, hey, we have these employees doing X, Y, Z. Well, from a technology standpoint, how could we develop things that may alleviate some of that workload? Hey, how do we, and obviously we're a tech company, so a lot of what we do is, tech related. But I do think that there's elements that from an HR perspective, you're able to get in there, identify, hey, what are the bottlenecks that employees are having? And even just minimal things like that to say, how can we help these employees be more productive? Like Steve just mentioned, hey, work from home environment, making sure you have what you need at home to do your job effectively.
Yeah.
We saw so many companies do that, and it was awesome. It was probably one of the better things we saw during COVID is making sure people were able to do their job effectively. And I think that's the start. Like, obviously, there's a lot of things to get into change. Efficiencies, effectiveness around an organization, and that's probably specific to each company. But I think it always starts with the employee and making sure people are able to do their job.
Yeah.
I love when you build a strong foundation, Bronson. It's. I think the company has to have a strong vision and purpose. Like, why do they even exist? And then, everyone can kind of. That's the foundation. Like, this is why we're doing what we're doing. We recognize the good and reward the value we bring to each other. And that's our vision, that's our purpose.
Yeah.
And then we have values that support that every day.
Yeah. And
so then, just the positive psychology of that being your foundation, being a company that focuses on the good, is a foundation of why I think, we've seen success and why we love working with our customers, because we're helping them build that positive foundation.
Yeah.
Because that's what moves the needle, and, in companies. That's when people are engaged, they feel connected, they feel a sense of belonging, and that's what we want to do. We want people to feel a sense of belonging.
Yeah, and without those values, without that driving focus, it can be really easy to kind of lose yourself to everything going on, right?
Oh, yeah. And I remember early on Awardco days when, this is 2011, 2012, things tanked for me, another business I had, so I had to do something else, founded Awardco, right? Yeah. But I had a building that I owned, and even the chiropractor that was there stopped paying rent, and I was in this building, like, by myself. And I remember turning off the heat, and it was cold because I just couldn't afford it.
Yeah.
And I remember coming home each day, and my wife's like, "Hey, how was the day?" And I was tricking myself. I was like, "It was great. These are the good things." And I focused on the good things that happened, and it was just I kept doing that.
Yeah.
And eventually things did turn. You know what I mean? But I could have come home and been like, "It sucked."
Yeah.
But so having the right mindset, that positive mindset, is huge, and that's the foundation I like to build.
Yeah. How do you, as a leader, translate that into a focus for your people, a foundation for the people that you work with on a day-to-day? Because as naturally, some of that happens by osmosis, right? Like if you have a strong vision of where you want the company to go or how you want to achieve something, people around you will kind of get a sense of that. But what if people aren't around you a lot, or they don't know you personally? Like as organizations grow, the access to leaders grows significantly less. So how do you build that strong foundation and give that vision to individuals?
Yep. I mean, a couple of things that we do to build that. We do have an all-hands meeting,
Yeah.
so I get in front of the whole company.
True.
Tanner does well. We get and we talk, right?
Yeah.
And then we actually recognize, we recognize on a daily basis, and we feature some recognitions.
Yeah.
And I don't know some of these people.
Yeah.
So I have this recognition that you have to actually, it's a physical recognition. There's, and where we do it all online, but we can also do it physically.
Yeah.
But I make the individual come find me. And I said, and I say, "Hey, you've been recognized, featured in our all-hands meeting. Come find me," and it creates an interaction with people. So
Yeah.
it's one-on-one. I mean, that's how you do. That's one way that I do it. But then also having all the positive recognitions that are occurring on a daily basis, I'm able to look at people that
Yeah.
I don't know in our feed, and I'm able to interact with them and say, "Oh my gosh, that was incredible. Thanks for doing whatever that was
Yeah.
for that customer." And so I'm able to, with technology, see all these positive things coming on a daily basis, and I interact with that. That's part of my job,
Yeah.
is to look at that and thumbs up it, congratulate.
Yeah.
And so even though I don't know those people, those are ways that I do it as well.
Yeah, and another thing that we've started doing is we've really finalized our values. A number of years ago, we really
Yeah.
strengthened those. But now we can recognize and strengthen values in that respect too, because when people do things, oftentimes it's not tied to a certain business outcome,
Yes.
right? But how do you do that? I mean, how do you tie something, if somebody just did something awesome that may not have been related to a project, how can you tie that back into what you're trying to achieve as a leader with your organization or your people?
Yeah. So, I mean, one of the things I love is tagging values
Yeah.
to a story. So we have a set of values that we believe in.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of companies do. You can go to their About Us page and what they believe, right?
Or it's on a wall, right?
I'm so tired of it just living there, or
Yeah.
when you're on board, you talk about it and that's it.
Yeah.
So we preach all the time, take those values, put it in a technology where you can recognize, and then when you share a story, tag whatever value is relevant.
Yeah.
And, and that's, through technology, we make it possible.
Yep.
For, just like you tag a picture to categorize your life, tag your values to categorize your vision.
Absolutely.
And
Yeah.
that's one way we do it, through technology.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I was going to say, we've kind of come through a unique scenario where we were able to be involved in basically every conversation
Yeah.
from the beginning. And as a work goes scaled and hundreds of employees, it's hard to be in there and kind of relay the culture we would love
Yeah.
in the workplace. And so obviously it comes down to hiring, making sure you have the right, managers, making
Yeah.
sure you're emphasizing those priorities amongst the organization. I think that's what Workco has done really well, and what we've seen from really successful companies is, as an extension of us, we have created a really great people ops team. And we have some people that their whole job is really focused around culture, making sure culture is going, recognitions are happening, making sure that us as members of leadership teams, hey, that we're recognizing that it's a priority for us. And so we've actually really gravitated, because we feel culture is so important. We feel like recognition is so important. That we feel like that's why here at Workco we've had a lot of success, and we've seen other companies have success, is when it's driven by the leadership, but you have people that can help facilitate and make sure culture spreads throughout the organization.
Yeah.
And that's really important for us. I think one interesting fact, and I think helpful for a lot of the attendees today, is we love manager to employee recognition. That is so valuable, so important. But what's interesting is when we actually dive into the data, it's actually probably one of the least utilized budgets amongst any budget at the organization.
Really?
It's because we don't feel like companies are pushing strong enough from leadership or from HR of what the recognition culture should be looking like, and saying, okay, hey, well, recognitions are happening often, but maybe not as much as they should from a manager to employees or to direct reports or what that might look like. And so I think from us, one thing that really helps organizations be successful, and especially in a recession, is you need to have frontline managers who are bought in the vision of recognition and rewarding employees. And it may not be a monetary value, but the value that goes in, and that's actually something we found over a lot of best practices and studies, is that it doesn't even need to have a monetary value.
Right.
Just people want to be recognized, and oftentimes even in a social setting, right? Within a social world, they want people to know that they're performing and they're doing well in their job and they're performing their responsibilities. And so I think a foundational piece to that for Awardco has been, hey, let's make sure we get the right people, but we also train, everyone in the organization. When we bring new hires in, we say, hey, there's X amount of 100 employees. Every single person, whether you like it or not, contributes to culture. And our ask of you on New Hire Training Day is that you contribute to culture and that you recognize often. That's one of the big things that we push here at Awardco. And we can see there's organizations that have recognitions happening, every other second. It's crazy. They're doing an incredible job, and I think those organizations perform really well. And there's direct correlation. We don't need to get into today because that's not what this is about, but the correlation from, the power of positivity and recognition is they talk about how those are the high-performing organizations in the markets.
Yeah, and the recognition, like you're talking about, like value-driven recognition, and then the culture that you build, it has a tangible ROI. Like not only on kind of the more intangibles like culture and positivity and kind of the general vibe of things, but it has an actual impact on the bottom line in a lot of ways. We're going to kind of go into that a little bit here. As you can see, recognition's ROI. Now this is, for all those kind of looking at this is from a Gallup study that was done a few years ago about the impact of recognition. And it has so many amazing things in it, but you can get 3x engagement. That's crazy. I mean, I always get mixed up in the numbers. I'm not too much of a numbers guy, but if to my memory, 2x is 100%, right? So 3x is way more than 100%. So kind of internalize that there. Recognition also has 23, like it can boost profitability by 23%. What company would not want that boost in profitability, especially in an uncertain time, right?
I saw one of our customers, Aptiv. They're a pest control company.
Yeah.
They're all over the country. They saw their teams that were performing the highest were recognizing 10 times more than everyone else. And so there's a correlation. So it does, it's amazing what it can do.
Yeah, profitability is just because of recognition. And it doesn't necessarily, like you said, Tanner, have to be monetary. It doesn't have to be in a technology, although that's really useful when your teams are all spread out.
Yeah.
It can be as simple as hey, thanks for doing that. That was really awesome, specific. And then, as you can see here, the recognition's ROI, it does continue with a reduction in turnover, right? And that's important now with the Great Resignation, although that might be changing here in a little bit. But you can reduce that voluntary churn, where people are leaving because they're unsatisfied with a manager or with the culture or something like that. Sometimes all it takes is a thank you. And like the positive psychology that you mentioned, Steve, we'll get into that here in a second.
Sure.
And so there's some things you can see, but recognition also helps the brain mediate anxiety and depression. It does that through a lot of really complicated processes. I'm passionate about psychology because I got my undergrad in it, so I'm really excited about it. But it does that it helps you mediate that anxiety and depression, make better decisions, like you mentioned earlier on. It helps you reduce the stress. It helps you be more productive. Like, it's incredible. And so here you can see a few more of these things. This is, again, all from the Gallup study. Reduction in patient safety incidents. So it's not just, it's not agnostic to one industry. Recognition has, an effect everywhere. And I wonder, Steve, maybe you can speak to this. Have you seen an industry that hasn't been affected by recognition or has not been positively affected by recognition? Mostly because, Awardco deals with a ton of different industries.
We do.
And have you ever seen any industry where they're like, I'm good, I don't need a recognition?
No.
Yeah?
No, every industry, every human being. I mean, we were born, as a little child, we just want recognition from our parents.
Just want to be seen, right?
You just want to be seen. So, no, it affects everyone, every industry, every individual.
Yeah.
And, I think people struggle with it being authentic, and not being hard to, and I don't want to make it corny or I'm afraid to say something because it makes it awkward. It's like the compliment game, right?
Yeah.
I used to play that on my first dates all the time, like to break the ice. It's the compliment game.
Yeah, yeah.
And I know that's corny, but...
Did it go well?
Yeah, of course. Well, yeah, why wouldn't it? Everyone wants to be recognized. You want to say something good about someone.
Yeah.
And you just got to break down those walls.
Yeah.
And that's what you have to do.
How would you both say people can be more authentic in giving recognition? Because that is a thing that a lot of people struggle with.
That's hard, right?
Yeah.
Because everyone has different personalities.
Yeah.
So how do you be more authentic? I mean, I love that, the younger generation now, they text, right?
Sure.
So that's why, being able to write, is an
Yeah.
easy way to say something to someone and have the ability to make it private too, so it
Yeah.
doesn't go public, So there's tools, we have that you can make something private. So just starting at writing it down.
Yeah.
Because then the person gets it, and then when you cross in the hallway, they will, thank you so much. You know what I mean? Then it
Yeah.
becomes authentic,
Yeah.
So just begin with writing it down.
Yeah, that's a great tip. Thank you for
Yeah.
that. Do you have any
Yeah,
thoughts there, Tanner?
I think there's, in typical fashion within the workplace, you have certain awards or recognitions that are either milestones,
Yeah.
and that's where I think Steve is getting at, is like, recognition for whatever reason has been so hard historically.
Yeah.
Like, we've made it harder and harder. There's approvals, there's hoops we have to jump through, there's this, and it's like,
Tax
simple,
implications.
yeah, it's like, yeah, exactly. And so that's where I think recognition should be made simple. And that's one of our goals here at
It is.
Workco is, we integrate with Slack or Microsoft Teams or whatever it is, and it's like, hey, you can recognize on the whim just like that through the
Yeah.
platform, and make it, recognition should not be hard, especially when it's just peer-to-peer.
Yeah.
Obviously, a face-to-face is really great, but, surprisingly, we've done some surveys and found out people get nervous, to go up and recognize people. They don't want to be in front of people. They don't want to,
Right.
so, even just a Slack or whatever, and it doesn't need to be through a technology, even it could be an email, whatever that looks like, but, I
Yeah.
think the forms of recognition are becoming more and more easy, and I think
Yeah.
that's probably one of the biggest changes in the industry that people are starting to see within the recognition spaces.
Yeah.
Recognition needs to be made simple.
Right.
It should not be hard, and it should be frequent.
Yeah, and it can be done in multiple different ways, right? A lot, like you mentioned, some people really don't like public recognition.
No.
Or they don't like to be brought up before a team or a crowd, and like that makes them deeply uncomfortable. It can have the opposite effect that you're
Yes.
intending, right?
Yeah.
As a manager, you need to know your personas of your
Yeah.
people. You got to get to know them, and you got to know that, so you don't put that person in that position where you bring them up in front of everyone. So, exactly.
Yeah, and I'm curious, Steve, if you have any other examples of Workco clients that have seen a benefit from recognition, either whether that's a tangible ROI, like they saw something like this. Do you have any other examples?
Yeah,
there?
of course. I mean, we, everyone, right, it has an impact. So I love when we engage with our customers and learn, right? And so one example is candle warmers.
Yeah.
We know that product. That's awesome. You want scents are incredible.
Yeah.
And they're a great customer of ours, and they saw a 30% reduction in absenteeism. They wanted to create a more positive culture. They wanted to modernize recognition.
Yeah.
And so as they did that, they increased, they saw a decrease in that, which was incredible. So that's one thing that definitely comes to mind. And there's also another company, ARUP Laboratories, here in the Salt Lake City area.
Yeah.
And we went through the numbers with them, and I love seeing they had a 200% increase in employees giving recognition. They saw a 363% increase in employees receiving recognition. And overall, they saw a 536 increase in recognitions by managers.
Oh.
And then one more overall, in their Glassdoor, they saw an 18% boost in employee satisfaction.
Yeah.
So again, the power of being positive.
Yeah. What organization wouldn't want a boost in managerial satisfaction, right?
Yeah, totally.
I don't know if you remember this, but years ago, I won't say the company name, but there was a study that came out that said worst companies to work for. And we actually reached out to them and said, hey, you're on one of the worst companies to work for.
Yeah.
And so we reached out to them, and they said, great, well, if you feel like you can help us, come in and help. And to show that it worked, they're no longer on the list. So it must be.
There you go. Yeah, it has a tangible benefit, right? And as we've talked about the positive psychology behind this, we won't belabor this too much because we want to get into the specifics for those watching about how you can implement some of these changes. And it doesn't have to be a huge deal right off the bat, but we want to get into that. So just as an aside, small happiness is a big, powerful antidote to stress. Like we talked about, it actually changes your brain chemistry. It's really cool. Just as an example to this, there's a book called The Happiness Advantage by Sean Achor, I believe is how you say his name.
Yep.
And he highlighted a study there where they had doctors, ER doctors, that, it's a high-paced environment, high stress, they have to diagnose quickly and correctly. Otherwise, the patient might be adversely affected. And all they did, they had, of course, a double-blind study and all this stuff, but they found that just giving a doctor a lollipop before they went in and diagnosed made the diagnoses faster and more accurate, 19% more accurate. And the doctor didn't even eat the lollipop. They just gave it to the doctor, and she was like, oh, great, and then she goes in and diagnoses more correctly. And that's just like small, tiny things like that. And recognition is a big part of that.
If I was a manager, a sales manager, I'd have a bunch of lollipops and just give them right before a demo, right?
Right, yeah. Or just go and like give them a pat on the back.
Well, we do something Thirsty Thursdays, right? Where we do treats, so we bring treats in the office on Thursdays, and I think. And every time we bring the treats in, people are posting on our Slacks. There's like Forrest Gump running. Like people are so excited, So you want to look for things like that, those little small doses. That improves culture, and it's just another way to increase that positive
definitely
of the company.
So now we want to talk about like how we can implement these changes. Give you who are watching some ideas of what you can do. Now we have a lot of ideas that we want to present to you here today. I know we want to kind of get into these. We talked about value-driven recognition, tying it to your values to make it so employees know what they're doing that is working. Like, oh, this is good. I can continue with that, right? But we have a framework for success with recognition we like to talk about. Yep. We've kind of reimagined recognition, as we call it, and we like to talk about different types of programs. Like you mentioned, Tanner, there's almost every company has some sort of recognition program around service awards, right? Service awards are a holiday program, something like that. So we talk about celebrate programs, recognition programs, and reward programs, and we'll kind of get into that. But 3 celebration programs is what we recommend. Yep. And they're really easy. 2 recognition programs and 1 reward. So first we want to talk about celebrate. How can you easily celebrate employees, especially if they're all over the country, they're remote, or if you have a large workforce? What are some easy ways, Steve, that employers can, or HR leaders can celebrate their employees? Yep.
Well, I love this because you want to create programs just for them existing, for belonging. I think a lot of people fall short. You have to do something to earn something. It's like, no. If you want to create a culture of recognition, you need to create some celebrate programs, and the best ones are birthdays. Yeah. Those that celebrate birthdays. The second would be anniversaries. Everyone has a work anniversary. Totally. The Employee Appreciation Day, there's a lot of build up to that. So that happens, and so I know we have some companies that celebrate when that happens in, I think it's March, right? Yeah, first Friday in March. We have some companies that make their own, kind of like Prime Day, right? Make your own. Yeah. You know what I mean? Yeah. This is Employee Week, right? I mean, why not? Sure. So you can create your own. Yeah. Holidays are other ones at the end of the year, like just holiday programs that we've seen. But the key on these programs is just automate them. And it will jumpstart your culture of recognition. When you do an automated birthday and you can tag the manager and maybe have it go on a post if the employee chooses that option, or service anniversary is the same thing. Automate it. So what it does is it automatically starts creating a culture of recognition. So you're not you're recognized 3 or 4 or 5 times a year automatically just for being there, just for being you. And so I think those are some ways, some examples. Yeah, I love that. Celebrate programs are powerful, and there's a lot of different ways you can do that. One thing we pioneered, right? I love this. This is our we've reimagined service anniversaries. Mm-hmm. Why, a lot of companies recognize every 5, 10, 15 years, and I understand why they do that. There's some IRS reasons of tax savings there. But we're at a time where you need to recognize every year. Right. You need to recognize them every year for being there. But we actually are saying, well, let's do it a little bit differently. Why don't we recognize everyone for showing up, right? So at Awardco, we have we call it A-Pay. Yep. And everyone gets $25 at the first of the month in points. If you've been here a year, you get 50. Mm-hmm. If you've been here 2 years, you get 75, 3, 100, et cetera. And we reward you that every month. Yeah. And so we say, if you've been here a year, you get this reminder once a month of that we appreciate you. Yeah. And so we took that budget and then we divided it up monthly. Yeah. And we have more positive doses of we appreciate you. Yeah. So again, it's just taking service anniversaries from 5, 10, 15 years to 1, 2, 3. We have a lot of customers doing that, to then splitting that budget and doing it once a month. Yeah. And we have seen so many positive things from our employee base. Incredible.
I was just going to say, I think one of the things is, obviously, with the average tenure of an individual at a company has come down greatly. You don't even make it to 5 years, right? And so I think that's where, how do we make an impact now and how do we, retain those employees? And this actually, it's been surprising. This is kind of a beta test at Awardco to try to figure out, hey, how can we change service awards and retention with an organization tied to what is the experience? And, even if it was just $5 a month, $10, whatever it is, those employees are like, hey, I love that. That is something that keeps me here. And the number of employees that are like, hey, I got this, or hey, I had to do that, and it's because I'm a sense of belonging. And it really is kind of taking over for what that service awards look like, and we have a lot of organizations that are going to be jumping on that.
Yeah, just as a personal anecdote to that, I'm really grateful for Awardco paying, like reward compensation, but I got a new pair of running shoes, and now every time I strap those on, I'm like, yeah, I got these from Awardco.
And
I love it.
And I'm the co-founder of the company and the CEO, and I absolutely love getting my points, and I just got some sweet headphones.
Yeah.
There's just something about it. And, our VP of sales, I was talking to him, he was in Idaho, jumping off cliffs into some river, lost his Apple Watch. So he's like, I don't want to just go buy with my own money. He had some points through APay that he was able to get it, and he was like, I love it. You know what I mean? So it's kind of fun.
It's that little dose of positivity, and with the great resignation going on, and like you mentioned, Tanner, the average tenure is so low now. I think I read it is a stat from the Bureau of Labor Statistics. The average tenure for a millennial, which I'm a millennial, is 2.8 years, and it's coming down. So, you gotta celebrate your people, and there's a lot of ways to do that. The next one is recognize. So three celebration programs is what we recommend. And then we recommend 2 recognized programs is what we call them. What kind of programs fall under a recognized program for you, Steve?
I've seen safety programs. I've seen wellness programs. You have to do something X to get Y. The value-based programs fall under this category. Those are my favorite programs. If you can recognize on values on a daily basis, you need to, right? And so this falls in that category as well. Sales incentives, is one that we see a lot. So again, these recognized programs is more interpersonal. It's more I have to do something to receive something. So we just talked about celebrate. That's just for belonging, and who you are. You get recognized, and you go to these programs. You have to earn it. You know what I mean? And then we have seen we've also created earn programs, where not only do you have to do something to be recognized, but if you achieve something that, like you do a survey or you go leave a review on Glassdoor for your company, you can claim that yourself. So that falls in this category as well, is the earn function. That we have.
Participate in your own recognition, right? Yeah.
That's actually been one of I think, the hidden gems that we've experienced is we'll have, initiatives. You talk about operations, how do you become more efficient? We've found certain things at the organization that, hey, this is really valuable to us, we need to change this, or we need to do X, Y, Z, and we'll go put an earn program out and say, hey, you go do this, just show the proof of it, and then we'll, approve it, and you get recognized $25, $50 or something like that. And that actually has made more impact on the organization to try to drive the right behaviors. And hey, we really want to try to accomplish something, well, go put an incentive out there off of an earn program. And you get results.
You'll get that.
My son works at 16. He works at a local hardware store, and he showed me a text the other day where they do contests all the time, earn programs. They said whoever gets the cleanest aisle receives Awardco points. And they go crazy, these 16, 17-year-olds, and they want to get their points because they want to buy their Jordans,
Sure,
And it's fun to see, like, it just gamifies it a little bit. And so every company can do that, and that falls in this bucket as well.
What would you both say to a company that maybe doesn't have the budget to do an earn program like that, to incentivize behavior with a monetary reward? Are there still recognized programs that can be implemented that would still be useful?
I think people do them all the time. You have employee of the month, employee of the week, employee of the quarter, whatever that is. And that's a staple. A lot of organizations, and that's where I would say a lot of recognition was built around is, hey, I may get a watch or a lapel pin or something. It may not have been worth a whole lot, but the status of being able to receive that was big. And I think that's the same thing. That's a very valuable form of recognition, is to go in and say, hey, look, we're going to accomplish something. And hey, you did this really well. You're the employee of the week, month, whatever. And we see a lot of those that have done really, really well. And there's not really a budget constraint there necessarily.
Well, we're also seeing those value-based programs. Those matter. Like if I have 6 values, how many times in a year did I get recognized for those values, or how many times did I recognize someone else for those values? Can show how bought in you are in the culture, and those numbers can be. We're seeing people use them for performance reviews. which is interesting, you know what I mean? So yeah, you don't, you know, those numbers matter, those recognitions matter without any monetary amount to them.
Yeah, and just like we've mentioned repeatedly throughout this, it doesn't necessarily have to have a monetary amount added to it. It can still drive that behavior.
Totally.
When you do add a little bit, for example, if you're trying to get people to participate in a training that is maybe a little bit dull, but everybody has to do it, you can incentivize that. And like, okay, great, there we go. You know, like we can get in there and do that.
And it's amazing. I think even, you know, small monetary values, we have companies that do, you know, micro recognitions, where it's just over time you can accumulate, and it ends up being worth something, right?
Totally.
I love some of the things we've seen in, you know, companies saying, hey, we're going to go ahead and we're going to create this program, and maybe it's not a monetary thing, but hey, dinner with an executive or dinner with the director, or go do something like that, and they create their own kind of, you know, rewards or recognition, which is really cool. So
that brings us to the next one, where we talked about earn programs, so you can see all that here. But finally, so we recommend 3 celebrate programs, 2 recognize programs of any type that we've just mentioned, and then 1 reward program. What do we mean by that? It's just one powerful reward program to show the power players how important they are. Yeah. So, excluding all the ones that we've talked about, what are some like really, really strong reward programs that people can come with? And maybe not even excluding. How can you wrap everything into a reward program, like one that really shows the power of what people are doing and appreciates their contributions?
Well, it's to have the philosophy of offering choice. You know, so you want to, you know, we've set out, we wanted to build a marketplace of all marketplaces, right? And bring in, you know, Amazon, bring in gift cards, bring in hotels, and then just let the employee choose what they want. People get so hung up on my logo has to be on it. Now, I do think it's important. Like, we do that all the time too. We have things for that. But I think it's really cool when you can let the employee choose what they want. Yeah. And then, like you mentioned, your running shoes, right? Everyone has their own things. We have employees that are finishing basements of their homes, and they talk about things that they got. My other co-founder, Mike, just had twins. And he just got this weird, I shouldn't call it weird, but it's a very detailed, it's a thing that, he had twins that, helps, you know, with you know, preemies, right? Yeah. And it was something so unique that you would never see it in any reward catalog. But when you create this huge award catalog and you can give choice to employees, they get what's meaningful to them, you know? And I thought it was interesting when we look at our top 10 of things redeemed by our employees. I think number 6 was like diapers. Yeah, interesting. Because it's meaningful to them. It's meaningful to them, yeah.
Yeah, and that's how you can create a really rewarding program, is just give them that choice. I was looking the other day, and I don't know if you guys know this, you can actually get a kitchen sink on the Awardco platform.
Oh, nice.
Really?
Yeah, so like you use like everything but the kitchen sink. Well, you can actually get a kitchen sink if you really wanted one, the full thing. So like you were talking about, Steve, the power of choice. Humans like having choices. It helps us feel like we are in control of our lives. Yeah. Right? I think that's one of the things that you can take away from a person, and that's what makes them feel that's why, like, the recession, like, kind of wrapping this all together, makes us feel anxious, because we feel out of control. Yeah. We don't have that choice. Yeah, good point. So, recognition is the tool that will make you the HR hero you were meant to be. Yeah. And you've seen that. We've gone over some examples of, like, Aptiv and ARUP and some large global companies that have spread recognition around all of their different satellite areas. It's been incredible. That's helped reduce this anxiety. And I just wanted to ask you both if you have anything that you want to add to that as we kind of close, about how the importance of recognition and what it means to you personally or to the organizations we've worked with.
Yeah, I would just say, look, we've talked a lot about great things. I apologize if we've injected too much, you know, of our award code practices or best practices we've seen. Again, I think I stand behind recognition should be easy. We're going into a recession or an economic downturn here that's been pretty difficult, has a lot of people anxious, has a lot of people concerned. Am I going to be able to retain my job, et cetera? And I think at the end of the day, what really breaks us all apart is, hey, is it a positive work environment? And that gets generated by recognition. We used to talk a lot about, why does Awardco work so well? Well, it's the people. And the people here at Awardco make Awardco. And why are the people happy to be here? Is because they are recognized, because they feel valued. We're not 100%, at it. We don't feel like we do it perfectly, but it's emphasized from Steve down to, like I said, all the employees. It comes down to recognition, simple recognitions for employees, and whether that be through a platform or even just from, hey, we're going to make an emphasis from here on out that managers need to try to recognize more often than what we do. And I think that's where Steve recognizes all the time.
Yeah, we're going into, it feels like we're going into a recession. So how do you help with anxiety? Let's let each other know that we care about you, care about, play the compliment game. And, let's try to make that a practice, because that's how you get through things, letting your neighbor know that, hey, you're awesome, I care about you, we're in this together. And I think as organizations, we can make that more natural and through technology. And I always say recognize in your flow. So use your Slacks, your Teams, your Outlooks. Make sure you have recognition tools that works with those, because that's when it becomes natural, when you can recognize in your flow. Make it simple. Yeah. So, let's just continue to recognize the good and find the good in everything, and I think we'll get through anything.
Yeah, I love that. Thank you. Thank you both.
Yeah.
That's kind of what we're here to talk about. We appreciate your insights. Thanks for joining us here today. I know you're both really busy, so this is, sit and chat with us for a little while, but thank you. We'll turn it back over to HRE, and then we'll do a few Q&A. We have a little bit of time for that, I think, and a couple of questions, but we'll turn it back over.
Thank you. And as a reminder, to submit written questions, please use the Q&A panel located at the bottom right corner of your screen. Please type your question into the text field and hit send. Please keep the drop-down as all panelists.
Yeah, excellent. Thank you. So we do have a question here that I'm going to kind of put to both of you here. When we've done Employee of the Month or the Year, we found that the same employees were winning all the time, or that people felt resentful if they weren't picked. What are your thoughts on that? Steve, you want to start something?
Yeah, we call our Employee of the Month, we call it the A-Team. So we rebranded it to the A-Team. And so what we do, we have a nomination program, and then we allow an employee to nominate one person a month. Yeah. And so we limit how many times they can do it. And then it goes into an approval flow for the executive team, and we take that into consideration. So we nominate, let's hear why they should be part of the A-Team, and then it goes to a committee to then decipher, to look at those things. Was this person already there? Was this person, how many, and we look at, was this person nominated a whole bunch of times? Maybe it's time for them to be that, But I think there has to be some human element to that. Yeah. Use technology to get the flow going, and then have it go to a committee to decide. And then sure, we get people that are like, well, I wish I was on the A-Team, right? But what's nice is that's not the only recognition program we have.
Absolutely.
So we recognize on a daily basis, so that's important, and then we just have this extra A-Team.
Yeah.
I think we do a good job, by departments, allowing, department heads and teams to kind of create those recognition programs themselves as well, and say, okay, hey, we're going to create something, we do this, and I think that's been helpful. Is obviously we have reward one a big high employee of the month, employee of the year, whatever that looks like. But I think we do it in departments as well. Yeah. They do a really good job of that with managers and department heads running that within their teams.
That's important to not have it be your only form of recognition. Absolutely. Yeah. So it looks like we're about at time. So thank you for all your questions. We'll hopefully, you'll be able to find more on a Wardco's website, or you can, chat with us at any time. But thank you for attending. We'll just pass it back over to HRE, and thank you very much. We appreciate your time.
Thanks, everyone. Appreciate it. Thank you.